Okay, so a brief summary where we are so far. There are two psukim. According to the Rabbanon, the first pasuk says we've got to load an animal, and therefore the second pasuk to unload is unnecessary. Why then is that second pasuk there? To tell me that I've even got to unload for free. According to Rabbi Shimon, both psukim are unclear. Therefore, one pasuk tells me unloading, and the other one tells me loading. That's where we are so far. Let us now move on to a new bit of Gemara, and we're on to Lamed base on base. Here we go. So from the words of both of them, we will learn that the Torah regards suffering by animals as an issue that needs to be addressed. Rabbi Shimon, and even according to Rabbi Shimon, he only says that the obligation to load and unload are the same. In other words, you can transfer both because the psukim are not clear. But Masami Kroi, if the psukim were clearer, then we would indeed work out this kavachema of if loading is required, or the more so unloading is required. It's just according to Rav Shimon, the first statement of saying loading is required is not actually that clear. So maybe the other way around, that we start off by saying unloading is required, and then we move on with the second verse to say loading is required. It's not clear according to Rav Shimon. But if it was clear, he'd agree with the Rabbanon that if loading is required, all the more so unloading is required because we don't want to have the animal suffering. My love, is this not Mishum Tzar Ba'alechaim? So obviously the reason why the unloading case is simpler and clearer and more obvious than the loading case is because of the animal suffering. Isn't that the case? Says Gemara. So Gemara says no. 1, 2, 3, 4. For now, 5 lines down. Dilma, perhaps, Mishum De'ikah Chisra and Kis. Maybe the Torah actually does not acknowledge animal suffering as a factor. And why then do we assume that the mitzvah to unload is more obvious than the mitzvah to load? I'll tell you why. Because if you don't unload the donkey, it's going to get damaged, and the owner is going to lose money. Maybe that's what makes us think that the unloading mitzvah is more obvious than the loading mitzvah. Not that the donkey is in pain, but that the owner is going to lose money if his donkey gets damaged. So it's not so clear that the Torah requires us to care about animals, says the Gemara. A nice sentence. Of course we care. But in din, is it required?
So in Noah's Ark, he and his family were non-stop feeding animals.
Whatever. But as a general, well, most animals died in the flood.
Well, yes, not
in the ark, but most of them died. Maybe the animals had a nice little island above the water, so they wouldn't suffer at all. No, they had to be brought in the ark, and maybe once the nice of them indoors in this unnatural environment. Or no, busy running like you're looking after.
But given that you can actually stay that back with the new.
Maybe, but it's not clear.
Okay.
So the Gemara says, maybe the reason why the unloading commandment is more obvious is because there's a cost to the owner if we don't unload the donkey because they're going to get hurt. But Haki Kama 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, you got the abbreviation there, Vav Hey Kuf. And thus it says, if you've even got to load the animal where there's no imminent danger of the animal being hurt because the load's already on the ground, Rika unloading to Isbach case where there is a prospect of the animal being hurt, like Hoshikain, is it not all the more the case that you've got to do it? So the Gemara says, you can't be sure from this that the concern of pain for animals is actually a valid concern in Torah law. Could be just a financial thing. That's why we regard the unloading as the more obvious mitzvah. Not because of the animal suffering pain, but the animal's gonna get hurt. And it's gonna be less effective as a beast of burden.
So the other jobs as well.
Right. It's useless.
In the garage.
Yeah, it can't carry stuff. Can't carry stuff. What's the point? So the Gemara says, you're going to tell me, therefore, that the reason why unloading is a greater mitzvah is because there's damage, there's a risk of loss.